It got to a point that I just felt like I just cannot tolerate this person. Like, I don't know how long I'm going to be able to be in this office and continue dealing with this person. Welcome back to WalktheTalk. Today we will be discussing dealing with difficult people and the implications that come along with that as Christians. So I guess one of the first questions that I'm going to be asking my co-host Kumbi and Nashara is it okay for us to label other people as being difficult? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Okay, so I think we don't want to be pretentious, right? And pretend that, in reality, there's no, people who are not, don't behave in ways that are difficult to bear. Okay, we don't want to, the reality is, we all know people who are quarrelsome. We all know people who, will take you there. We all know people who, just do one thing or the other that we know irks us in one way or the other. So I don't want us to act like, okay, that's not a reality, that doesn't exist. It exists. We know that it happens, but we also don't want to necessarily oversimplify a human being and just label them as this one thing, because people have a whole history behind why they behave the way that they behave, and people have experiences that lead them to be who they are and what you're experiencing. Not to talk of the fact that you personally have experiences that lead you to perceive how they're acting in a particular way.
Yeah, I think that what you were saying is true about oversimplifying a person. People have history, people have baggage. That person didn't just become difficult. There have probably been multiple occurrences of where someone could have corrected them or they could have had a conversation with them. So people are not just difficult out the womb. I mean, some are, but it's been years and years and years of this person being difficult. So I do think that it's important for us to keep in mind that us as believers can be labeled as difficult by the world, just simply because of the culture that we live in. We live in a culture where we're told do what makes you happy. Whatever that is, do what makes you happy. We're told that this is my truth. This is my truth, and you can't say anything against my truth. So with being a Christian and following the Bible and having certain standards and certain beliefs, we're automatically labeled as difficult or intolerant or unloving. Right. So it's good to keep that in mind. When we define someone as difficult, we can agree that they are difficult, but not define it by the world standards. Just because you don't agree with someone doesn't mean that they're difficult. It just means that you have a different perspective. Right. So that's just something that I think we should keep in mind.
That's good. That's good. I think heart posture in terms of how you're looking at another human being is important. Yeah. Because if you have to consider pride. Are you being prideful and just looking at that person and saying they're this way and that way? And Scripture talks about specks and logs, right? Mm-hmm. Before you take out the speck in somebody's eyes, take out the log in your own eyes. Yes. So it's important to just make sure that you're also considering, okay, why am I looking at this person this way, or why am I considering them as a difficult person? Mm-hmm. So I think that's important. I also think at the end of the day, it's important to be committed to compassion in how you relate with that person, however you view them. At the end of the day, as believers, we're still called to compassion. We're not called to just, treat people any kind of way because they behave a certain way towards us.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah.
Good. That's right. Yeah.
And the Bible speaks about that. It says should you, I'm paraphrasing, should you receive a reward or anything like that if you love those who love you?
Right.
That is your reward.
It takes a lot of strength to love someone who's difficult. Right. But again, it goes back to God and Jesus loving us enough to die on the cross. So if he is able to do that, then we can certainly be compassionate towards difficult people.
Right. And there's also the scripture that says that love your enemies, Not necessarily saying the difficult person is automatically your enemy, but if you're called to love your enemy, how much more a difficult person who's not necessarily an enemy.
A brother or sister.
Yeah, brother. It might be a brother or sister, someone in your family. We all got family members, Yeah.
Question 2. So have you been called difficult, or have you called someone else difficult? before? Be honest.
I most definitely have called somebody else difficult on multiple occasions. But one particular incident that I can remember, this is not so long ago, I was managing this older woman, and she was from another country. She was from an island. And so she kept saying that we had some cultural differences, so that's why I wasn't understanding her. But I kind of felt like, no, you just want to do your own thing, and you want to blame it that it's cultural differences. Okay. So I felt like she was just a difficult person. It didn't matter what it was. Like, anytime I tried to correct something that she did, she would blame it like, well, you just don't understand, and in my culture, this is what we do. And like, one example. So we all have phones in our office. And so when my phone rings, literally the day before, I told her, don't answer my phone, just answer your phones. So the supervisor of the whole lab called. She answers the phone.
Your phone?
My phone.
Okay.
So then when she explains to me what happened, she says, well, the supervisor got an attitude with me because I answered your phone. She says that she usually calls you and you'll call her back if I have a missed call. I was thinking, do you expect me to sympathize with this? Because I literally just told you. No. She's like, well, in my culture, it's just polite that you answer the phone. If you hear the phone, you just answer the phone. I'm like, darling, here in this space where we are, this is not something that you do. And I found it very, very difficult to correct anything that she did. And it got to a point that I just felt like I just cannot tolerate this person. Like, I don't know how long I'm going to be able to be in this office and continue dealing with this person. So, yes, I've called people difficult before.
I'm so curious to see how that story ended. Did you get that girl fired?
Well, she eventually quit, but it wasn't because of me. Okay. I'm just kidding.
Anyway, so I was in a situation on a bridal party where we had to plan a shower. And so, you know, when you're planning a shower, you're working with a variety of ladies. So, y'all are So, you know, I just found it so difficult because some of the ladies with very strong personality just kind of wanted things to go their way, you know, and not necessarily thinking about the bride per se, but just basically very inflexible and very self-focused and saying, you know, well, we have to have it on this day because this is when I'm available. Well, how about when everybody else is available and when, you know, the bride is available? You know, like, you know what, it's just all about what works for me. And I just found that so difficult to do it because I really just wanted to be like, it's not about you. You don't need to be here. You know, but that, obviously that's insensitive and that's me just struggling with dealing with that situation. But yeah, that was tough.
So I have a follow-up question. So John 15:18 says, if the world hates you, understand that it hated me first. So as believers, are we called to be difficult to some degree?
Well, I don't necessarily know if you should go out to look to be difficult, but if it's something that happens as a side effect of being a Christian, then, you know, okay, it just comes along with the territory. But it's not something that I'm going to go out and say, you're a sinner, I'm a Christian, and, you know, you need to follow these ways. If you don't, you're a difficult person, or if you don't follow me, then you think that I'm being a difficult person, then something's wrong with you. I just think that it's something that may occur, that maybe we can expect, and we should be prepared to be able to deal with that, but not necessarily something that we're called to actually go out and try to be difficult.
And scripture says, you know, strive for holiness. I believe it's in Hebrews where it says strive for holiness, strive for peace with everyone and holiness, without which no one will see the Lord. I think, you know, that's it's perfect. So I think, you know, it's the onus is on us to try to be peacemakers. However, people might not receive us in that way, and that's you know, I don't think we should be bogged down with the fact that somebody else is not receiving us as peacemakers or as people who are doing good.
Yes.
So for the next question, do you all think that it's okay to cut off? Cut off difficult people or toxic people?
I personally, this is personal.
Go ahead, Portia.
I have no problem cutting people off. I do not necessarily think that it's a problem to cut people off. In Matthew, it speaks about if your eyes cause you to sin, to gouge them out. If your right hand causes you to sin, to cut it off. So how much more for a person that's causing you to kind of sin, to cut them off? I don't have a problem with it. I think that it's perfectly okay if it's causing you to sin, to cut a person off.
Well, I have a different perspective. I understand that though, because there are those people that you want to cut them off. But I feel like as believers, you have to take steps to reconcile with that person before you just cut them off. Matthew 18:15 encourages, it gives you the steps to reconcile with a brother or a sister who has sinned against you. And there are multiple steps until you get to that point where you cut them off. And the Bible also speaks about loving one another. The Bible, I mean, if it's supposed to be the salt and light in the world, and we just cut people off, then how does that match up with cutting people off who we're supposed to be salt and light? That's all I'm saying. And we do live in a culture where it's like, oh, you're toxic, cut you off. Oh, you didn't say the right thing to me, cut you off. But that's the world. We're not the world. We're believers. So I think that we're called to forgive, and we're called to at least take the steps to reconcile and keep the door open with those people who have been difficult in our lives. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, really, if you consider, we're in a society where it's like all about protecting your energy. You know, I gotta protect, I gotta preserve, I gotta protect my energy. If this doesn't serve me, then bye. You know, that's the culture that we live in, and I is that the gospel? Is that what Jesus is about? Is that when you consider who Jesus is, did he go around cutting people off? You know what I'm saying? So I think that, you know, we have to be careful, like, what we're absorbing. Is it from culture or is it from, you know, Christ? You know, I do understand there are scriptures that talk about, okay, like in Proverbs, if you go to Proverbs, a lot of times talking about a fool will behave this way, you know, a fool will behave that way. So I do understand that there are people that you necessarily don't want to keep in close company. I get that, you know, but in terms of like just erasing a whole human being out of your life, I feel like that's we sometimes are simplistic and we oversimplify a human being and just decide that, you know what, you're not worth being in my life. And it can be in a prideful manner, in a way that is just all about ourselves and serving ourselves and not caring for that other person as, you know, someone who's created by God. So.
Well, speaking of Proverbs, let's just take it here. Proverbs 20:19 specifically says that a gossip betrays confidence, so avoid a man who talks too much. To me, that's the cutoff. Avoid a person who talks too much. So if these people are causing you to sin, the Bible is perfectly okay with saying you need to avoid those type of people. So I think that if it's preserving yourself, if you have to cut off people to preserve yourself so that you don't fall into sin, then it's perfectly okay. Better to cut that person off than to end up in hell.
I think priority definitely is holiness and serving the Lord and honoring the Lord. But we just have to be clear in how we define holiness and what we define, you know, as like wanting to honor the Lord. A lot of times when we do those things, we're not doing it just to honor the Lord. We're like, you're an inconvenience to me. I don't like hearing your voice. I don't like being around you. You know, that's more of where a lot of times that it comes from. Not necessarily like, you know what, I want to do what's pleasing to God, or I want to, you know, live in obedience to God. You know, so as long as it's coming from that end where your priority is to honor God, okay.
And that's my point. Sometimes you have to just go ahead and say, you know, you causing me, you're tempting me, you're taking me in a direction that's not necessarily beneficial for my characteristic, for me to let my little light shine. So I have to, you know, just avoid relationship with you. And sometimes that's perfectly fine for you to have to do that. We do want a caveat, like, you know, my co-host said, that, you know, yeah, you should take, you know, steps to try to reconcile those relationships. But if it comes down, if God is okay with you gouging out your eyes and cutting off your hands,
God is not okay with you. No self-mutilation, please.
Please do not try this at home.
Definitely metaphorical.
Definitely. So
be tempted to sin. But I also think that these people that we're dealing with who are difficult, these people that we're dealing with that are sinful, who is praying for them? I don't know if people do that. I think the behavior is more so, I'm going to cut you off and not even think about you anymore. That's the thing. So if you're going to cut people off, you need to continue to pray for people, but you do have to take steps to reconcile. So thank you for tuning in to Walk the Talk. Today we discussed difficult people. We have varying opinions about how to deal with difficult people, but some of the key things are being compassionate and being salt and light, even to those people who are being difficult. We encourage you to challenge yourself. Ask your friends and family, are you the difficult person in their life, and how do they deal with you? I think that will humble all of us if we get those answers. So challenge yourself. Look inward. So thank you again for tuning in. Please comment, like, and subscribe to Walk the Talk Talk Show on YouTube, and we will see you later.
Like once that line was crossed, I just felt like, okay, no more calls, no more texts. That's it. I mean, I barely didn't even want to like the pictures on Instagram like that.
In terms of building genuine sisterhood, if we have fear of man, we're keeping walls up.
It's not like I'm not going to church anymore because all of them are the same.
Yeah.
I'm not associating with Christians anymore because all of them are the same.